The Dorchester Hotel in London has been the setting of some of the most glittering star-studded functions over the years. But few were quite as magnificent as a special party that was held recently to celebrate the 25th anniversary of one of Britain's most famous names. A name that has become a phenomenon in this country and most of Europe, and one which has completely revolutionised an entire industry. The name is Edward Stobart. Edward Stobart Limited is one of Britain's biggest success stories. Over the last 25 years, it's grown from being a tiny one-truck haulier to having one of the largest fleets on the road. It's become a phenomenon and a cult itself, attracting instant recognition 24 hours a day whilst carrying some of the country's best-known brands. Now the company has become a household name and as famous as many of the products that it carries on a daily basis. From Coca-Cola and Britvic and a whole host more, they've all been on a Stobart truck at some part of their life. From beers to pet foods and nappies, many of the UK's leading manufacturers use Edward Stobart to ensure that their products get into the shops on time. Edward Stobart Limited had its roots among the lush pastures of rural Cumbria. The Stobart family were part of the farming community in Hescott Newmarket, a small village some 13 miles from Carlisle. It was principally an agricultural business dealing in fertilisers. Although the company was started by Edward Stobart Sr., it was his son Edward who was later to realise the potential of the early seeds that were being sown.
The business was based about half a mile out of Hescott Newmarket on the top of the hill. The views from the depot were of trees, rivers, hills, you know, and really a really nice place to be and a nice place to live.
It might have been a beautiful environment in which to live, but as a base for what was to become a multi-million-pound haulage and distribution empire, it left a lot to be desired.
It was a shambles, wasn't it, really? Start hunter, there was nothing really, just a house and an old building and nothing. The slag sheds you got built, there was really nothing.
The garage, which is now gone, is very basic. It did have a pit inside, but it didn't have a door. All the time that I worked there, it didn't have a door. It had a stove in the corner that blew up on a regular basis. The facilities were pretty basic.
Although the family home at Newlands Hill had its shortcomings as the headquarters of a haulage business, for Anne, John, Edward and William, the 4 Stobart children, it was paradise, and where the young Edward gained his inspiration for the future.
I remember Edward starting school. He was a small boy, fair, rather unsure of himself. There were other members of the Stobart clan in the school as well. They were a great asset. They really were. They were a good lad. He wasn't particularly academic, but he was very shrewd and had a great native intelligence. Do you know what I mean? It was all there, and it's obviously come out to the fore. Edward, I think, was more interested, even then, in little cars, tractors, mechanical things.
There was one day, I was coming with a lot of fertiliser, I took the sheet off, and Edward wasn't so old, he was just so big, and there was an old Thames trader, and I had to go somewhere to take another man a message with the pickup. And when I come back, the wagon had gone. And where was it up? Trying to get into the store shed, sticking on a bank, standing up in the cab with his feet on the brake and the clutch. I asked him what he was doing. Well, he says it was starting to rain. He says, I thought I'd put it inside. Well, the sun was shining, it was a lovely day. He says, it was starting to rain. He says, I thought I'd put it inside. Just to give a go in the wagon, say, nobody about.
Life at home was pure heaven for young Edward, who was in his element among the machinery. He certainly thought it was a lot better than school, which he would try to avoid at all cost.
There was one instance when the schoolmaster phoned up and said that they've been playing truant too often and they must make an effort to get to school regularly. And he emphasised the fact that they would never make anything in life at all unless they were educated.
I think he probably couldn't wait to leave school to get involved in it. He would, whenever possible, he would help, you know, and he was there doing a man's job.
This job included running the 8 trucks in his father's fertiliser business. But they were not fully utilised delivering to the local farms, so young Edward decided to find other work for them. Eddie Sr. decided to concentrate on running the agricultural side of the business, while young Edward looked after the general haulage operation. He obtained a wide variety of work, including carrying for one of the local factories, the Metal Box Company in Carlisle. Along with other local hauliers, Eddie Stobart Limited began transporting pallets of cans for the food and drink industry.
I was very impressed with him because of his willingness. That was the thing that struck me. Nothing was too much trouble. It doesn't matter what time of day or night, he would service your request. And that made my life a lot easier. You could go home and sleep at night. As before, you just weren't sure whether the goods were going to be there when they should be there. And with the advent of just in time, I mean, it was an absolute boom to the business. When he started, he only had the 1, and then he grew from 1 to 3, and then it just grew steadily. And in the end, I had to ring his father, and I said, look, if he buys any more trucks, I can't give him any more work.
He always tried to do the full day's work and as much more as he could possibly fit in. He was that way orientated.
Although the extra work was very welcome, it actually brought its own problems, and it became apparent that the company would have to move from its rural setting and go down the road to Carlisle. It was here at Greyston Road in the centre of Carlisle, which is now a modern housing estate, that Edward set up his new base. Although it was a far cry from the rural surroundings which he was used to, it made it much easier to get drivers for his expanding business. Although Edward was moving things steadily forward, another member of the family, his brother William, 7 years his junior, was showing an interest too. While the adults got on with the day-to-day business, he only had one thing on his mind.
William always wanted to drive. One of my early vehicles was a car with a bench seat in the front, and William used to stay in the front, between his mother and I, and he used to always nudge up and want to be on my knee to get hold of the steering wheel. He got to say, let we all drive. And he's been saying it ever since.
As soon as he possibly could, William started to get involved. First in the traffic planning side, and then he achieved his ultimate dream of driving an Eddie Stobart truck. And William wasn't the only one who was out on the road, for Edward was still having to drive. Although he was running the company by day, he'd think nothing of taking a truck out at night, then coming back to Carlisle, snatching a couple of hours sleep on a desk, and then getting down to another full day's office work.
He didn't have a lot of other interests apart from his business, and that was everything. And it rubs off on everybody, I think. In those days, it was infectious.
One of the first major purchases made by the company was here at what is now the Kingstown Industrial Estate in Carlisle.
There was one stage where the customer was due to occupy the building, and it still wasn't finished, and we actually tied sheets up between the stanchions in the building to create a wall so we could actually begin storing the product by the completion date, but we made it.
But it wasn't only the warehousing that was growing. The overall increase in business in the 80s meant that other expertise had to be brought on board.
I joined when it had 25 vehicles, a turnover of 1.6 million. We operated from one depot in Carlisle, a very small unit, with about 100,000 square feet of warehousing at that time. I think Edward had, for a time, had been wondering in what direction to take the company. He was at a sort of pivotal point. If he wanted to go any bigger, he needed more people around him. He had the option of going smaller and staying as very much a one-man operation. But thankfully he chose to go bigger, and I was fortunate to be one of the ones that he brought in alongside him.
It was in 1987 that the company pitched for the entire UK contract with CMB, then known as the Metal Box Company here in Carlisle. It was a contract that was to be the turning point in the fortunes of the company and ensured that they go on to become a major league player.
What was the feeling like when you first gained the contract? Can you remember?
Oh yes. Elation initially. And then suddenly the realization that we've got a major opportunity here, and we've got to make it work. We've made some commitments to metal box that we knew we were able to carry out, but we actually had to get down and make it happen.
Getting the metal box contract guaranteed the company's stability, and it signalled a new era. But it was only the beginning of the company's tremendous growth. As is always the case with Edward Stobart Limited, there was more to come. It was in 1987, here at what is now the gigantic Toyota car factory at Burniston near Derby, that Stobart's opened their first depot outside Carlisle. In those days, it was an old wartime RAF station, the hangars were in existence, and they were used as warehouses. But it was very significant for Stobart because it was their first taste of truly national distribution.
Up until that point, we've been a one depot operation, everything located in Carlisle. And for the first time, we were having a remote site, a remote manager who had to leave on his own to run the local operation. And it was a difficult time to have a change of management techniques, a change of how you operate the business. But that was the first step of many, thankfully, and it worked very well for us. When we moved in, it wasn't in the best of conditions. I think when we first viewed it, it was on a dry day. The first day we entered, it was a wet day, and we realised some of the problems. But we've learned a lot from that.
With more and more trucks on the road, the Stobart name was starting to get recognised the length and breadth of Britain. And like any other haulier of the time, the name brought with it its own unique image.
He was always prepared to invest in immaculate equipment. And even our directors, metal box directors at that time, remarked on, the quality of his wagons. And we always made sure that if there was a visit by the MD, that we'd have Stobart's wagons in there because they were better than our own.
The appearance has changed over the years. The actual colours started right at the beginning. That green and that red is still the same green and that red we use today. It's got different Pantone colours now. Because it used to be phosphorus red and deep Brunswick green. Those were the two colours. We had no white in those days. And I went into a place in Carlisle, the chap who used to do our sign writing. I spent a day or 2 days with him, chalking it out on the curtain in this little shed. And we chalked it out and we put Edward Stobart Limited right down the curtain. In those days, people didn't go to that sort of expense or that sort of detail. The first ones were script writing. But as time went on, we decided to put a bit more white to the cabs. They actually come in white gloss paint, so we didn't have to paint round the windows. So it was done for two bases, to look better and to be more cost effective.
It was all done by hand on the vehicle, and it was quite difficult with letters 3 foot high. But when it was on the vehicle, it looked very impressive.
With an ever-growing fleet of trucks on the road, the famous script soon became a talking point. But things never stand still for long at Edward Stobart Limited, and with a bold new era on the horizon, it was felt it was time to overhaul the image.
I think there was a concept that they had that it had to be crisper, more modern, bolder, and they got that concept across to us, and we just translated that through the computer system and through the various artwork aids that we've got, till finally we come up with something that both of us said, that's it. We've got people almost permanently employed, one way or another, designing, executing Stobart sign writing, depending on the flow of vehicles.
So there's quite a bit of red and green paint used, is it?
The red and green paint, the curtain material itself, I suppose, over the years is measured in the hundreds of thousands of metres, and if you translate that into miles, there'll be a few miles of Stobart green that's been purchased and built.
Now what's this material? It's not paint, is it?
Screening.
Screening?
Yeah.
This is the famous colour scheme. What do they call this? What colour is it? This what we're doing now.
This is Stobart yellow.
Is it?
Yeah.
What specially
mixed? Yeah.
Good Lord. You're in a way. I can't.
I know. I'll go around this.
You're going too quickly for me. I'll tell you what surprises me with all the washing that the Eddie Stobart trucks have. How is it doesn't get washed off all these letters?
It's thinner mixed ink, so the ink sort of bites into the plastic.
How's your spelling then?
All right.
But Stobart's high standards aren't restricted to just side curtains. As anyone who has ever followed a Stobart truck will tell you, there's equally as much attention to detail when painting the rear. Every fitment blends in with the design. Stobarts have been instrumental in improving the look of Britain's roads. They introduced side skirts as well as drawbar trailers, revolutionising the transport industry.
The two brothers have their own ideas about how things should be, and they seem to have an antenna which tells them when things are right and when things are wrong. And they come to us with outline ideas, which hopefully as a good partner we help them to translate into a final design. We give them various choices, but really it's their ideas, their instincts that's driving the thing, and what you see in the finished product is more due to them than it is to us.
Although the company's livery is now renowned, it's not just the Stobart name that's important. Each vehicle has its own unique identity that has become something of a talking point in its own right.
The first truck I named was 20 years ago. It was called Twiggy. Twiggy was in the charts at the time. She was a model. I suppose I must have fancied her in somewhere. And then it went on to Dolly, after Dolly Parton, and then it was Tammy Wynette. Then drivers used to choose names, but that didn't work because they used to fall out with the wife and then the name had to change, or they fell out with the girlfriend, the name had to change, and it became a bit of a nightmare. So all the names now are put on by one person.
We've named some after female pop stars like Madonna and such like, fashion models, anything that's on TV. If I'm reading any books at the time, if there's some unusual girls' names in those, I usually use them.
200, medium right and fast medium left downhill into flat crest over. Hang on, I'm not driving that fast now, we're in an Eddie Stobart wagon.
For Britain's ladies rally champions, Stephanie and Rachel, the irrepressible Simonite sisters, the naming of a truck was an accolade with a difference.
So how did this come about, girls?
Well, we've always been Eddie spotters, and we do a rally every year in Carlisle, and we actually met Eddie Stobart, and he asked us if we wanted a truck named after us, so we jumped at the chance, and it was fabulous. Amazing.
There's lots of other famous people have the names that they know, Twiggy and so on.
It's quite an honour.
And do you ever see it when you're out on the road?
I think we've seen it once. We weren't actually sure whether it was, but it looked like Stephanie Rachel, and it was coming home from a rally that we'd done really well at, and it was just a nice finishing touch to see that on the way home.
How do the statistics compare between this and the rally car?
Oh, they're quite different. The truck has done 100,000 miles in its first 12 months, where I think our rally car's done about 10,000. The fuel consumption's pretty similar. This does 8 to the gallon, but the engine on this is a 12 litre, whereas our rally car's just a 2 litre.
What is the most difficult part of driving this?
Just the sheer size of it. It's, to get used to it. It's a new 45-foot length trailer, and you're very high up off the road, which is good because you can see everywhere.
Do you like sitting up here, eh?
Yes, it's good. I've been on the old CB and made a few friends. It's good.
Do you reckon you'll make a Stobart driver?
Well, we haven't got the uniform yet, have we?
But the Stobart name isn't just about vehicles.
What is Eddie Stobart Limited? Is it this? You now are Eddie Stobart Limited.
The people we select to join the company spend the first few days with us on an induction and training programme. The first part of that is classroom-based because it's very important that they get to know the organisation they're now a part of. And then that's followed by a very practical training programme. There's actual on-the-job training. Drivers spend time with the training manager in their vehicles because it's very important that people are trained in safe and efficient working practices.
When you're passing a vehicle as we are now, move out and pass the vehicle straight rather than coming out round it, so you need more road. And then vehicles coming towards you, understand fully what your intention is.
People joke about the ties, you must wear a tie. Well, why not? If a city executive can wear a tie and be seen to be professional, well, our drivers are professionals too.
And that image is instilled in new drivers from the beginning. They all wear uniforms and are instructed to act with courtesy on and off the highway. It's all part of the process of making sure that Eddie Stobart is king of the road and an ongoing attraction to thousands of road users.
If you're a Stobart spotter, you really should come here to Warrington. The statistics are mind-boggling. You could fit 9 football pitches in this area. And all the warehouses are crammed full of popular products from Pampers nappies to Win-a-Lot dog food. Oh, and not forgetting 72 million empty drink cans.
Well, this is all very impressive, Barry.
Yes, this is a 100,000 square foot warehouse which we had built 4 years ago when we moved on to the site. As you can see, we store cans in here for CMB, people like Castrol, Shell, vegetable oil, people like that.
So it's all actually full of fresh air, is it?
Yes, actually is, yes.
And this isn't the only warehouse on the site,
No,
is
it isn't. The total site is 18-acre site, and we have 450,000 square foot of warehousing here. 150,000 of which is used by Spiller's Pet Foods, which is 2.5 million cases of tins of dog food and biscuits and so on and so forth. The site itself is 750,000 square foot, which is equivalent to 9 football pitches. We have 17 sites throughout the country. They stem from Glasgow in the north down to Poole in the south, Wisbech on the sort of east of the country, down as far as Bristol in the west.
There are all these famous names in the warehouses on every single shelf, but what other sort of business does Stobart do?
We do a just-in-time service where we have to supply goods to people within a certain time, and that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can have a call off from a customer saying that they need empty glass bottles for filling. Like I say, we have half an hour at Warrington here, and down at Reading it's 15 minutes. If it's not in there within the 15 minutes, we could have Holston pills running down the factory floor, if you like, because that's how important it is that we get these bottles to them.
Keeping tabs on all this stock is a mammoth task, but it's helped by the very latest technology, which ensures that at a moment's notice goods can be moved to another warehouse or to a customer anywhere in the UK.
Nationwide we store over 184 million empty containers, which if you were to fill would take the contents of over 80 Olympic-sized swimming pools. We actually scan the product as it comes in with a barcode reader, which is then transmitted by radio data terminals to a mainframe computer, which is networked throughout the UK, so we know where any product is at any one time throughout the UK.
I suppose we're very, very lucky and successful because we have such a large fleet. If we looked at it from an aerial view, you would virtually see an Eddie Stobart vehicle dotted every part of the UK. The company runs a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week operation. It's fully computerised, so at any one time I can go into the computer and track down a fleet number on the previous job it's done, what the vehicle's doing now in its next location. We will move anything for anybody throughout the UK and Europe, round the clock basically.
Keeping the operation ticking over is a work of art, with deliveries being made to customers throughout the country, including every major supermarket chain. The nerve centre is the planning office in Carlisle, where the fleet of trucks and their daily operations are plotted to ensure that the company runs smoothly 24 hours a day. It's a continuous process.
You can start to plan off, but as the day goes along, it's just constantly changing because of the lead time that the customers come to us with. When one of the planners is planning a job, he also knows the running time from A to B, the driver's hours, and how long it will take him to do that job. We move everything round from one vehicle to another vehicle, and it's a great big chess game.
Good afternoon, Edward Stobart Limited.
That chess game also involves keeping an eye on the whole operation, from ordering through to delivery, involving an immense amount of paperwork, bills and invoices.
We have about 2,500 jobs per day, 600,000 jobs per annum. For each job you could have one piece of paper, 5 pieces of paper. It's a lot of paper flow within the company. We have an administration team in Carlisle, and also we have administration people out at our depots and on customer sites. Customers all have different requirements, so it may be that they want a daily invoice, a weekly invoice, a monthly invoice. It's vital that all the paperwork is correct, otherwise the customers don't pay the bills.
When all those bills have been paid, the money ends up here in the Midland Bank in Carlisle, where the company finances have been handled since 1980. Now, although the Midland Bank is known as the listening bank all over the country, when Stobart's are your customer, you do tend to listen just that little bit harder.
The bank-customer relationship, to me, is a partnership. It's about sharing information, and I suppose if I was to provide you with a textbook example of how a bank-customer relationship should work, Stobart's would be it. And now that partnership is based upon sharing information, so we meet regularly to update on primarily strategic issues. There have been occasions when there have been difficult decisions to make, and I think if you have this working partnership, it's so much easier for those decisions to actually be accepted on both sides.
The growth of the company over the last 5 years has been very substantial, just under 25% a year. We've achieved that first and foremost by providing a quality service to the customer. The customer has been very happy with us, he's given us more business, and our reputation has spread, which means that other potential customers are coming to us and asking us to tender and quote for their business too, and we are picking up a lot of that business. On a day-to-day basis, our operating managers have good information from which they can make good decisions which help us to improve our day-to-day profitability.
But that success now means that the name Eddie Stobart pops up all over the place, with a growing list of sponsorship and marketing opportunities.
Class number 4, the horse pairs, is sponsored by Eddie Stobart Limited, the most recognised name on the roads of Britain today, commencing business 25 years ago among the Coolbeck Fells.
They come from all over the country here. We've got Prince Philip competing, but we've also got the ordinary farmers and people who just own their horses for fun and pleasure. Eddie Stobart provides his road show, which is an attraction for people to look round, and the bouncy castle for the kids.
This is Chelsea. Yeah. This is our final. They ask us basically where we go, what sort of thing we carry, what's it like to live inside a lorry. Mainly children, and they love that sort of thing, you know. But anything really. Some of them, they're a little bit technical. They want to know the gears, the horsepower, things like that.
We just spot them as we go along. We actually have my brother-in-laws and my sister-in-laws and all at it now. It's just sort of a laugh.
It's grown their family thing.
There's an ever-growing list of companies and individuals who've joined the bandwagon and are now well and truly Stobart fans.
We couldn't run the event without the support of the sponsors, and we're very grateful indeed for their support.
They're definitely winners in their class as far as I'm concerned.
I wanna be an Eddie Stobart driver. Nowadays we all sing in his praise. Oh, let me be an Eddie Stobart driver, 'cause Eddie Stobart rules the motorways. You know, I want to hear the children. I want to hear them cheer like they cheer Eddie when he overtakes us from afar. Oh, With his fan club expanding, he just leaves the others standing. I'd love to be a Stobart superstar.
There's very few companies in our sort of field that have anything like the interest that's been generated in a company like ourselves. I mean, I don't know of any other haulage company that has a quote fan club, unquote.
It's not just the business that's growing, it's the fan club as well. We've got members in Europe now and even as far as Australia. There's your little children that sit in the back of the cars breaking their journeys up. There's housewives, doctors, policemen. We've even got pop stars on there now as well.
We used to tour for a while with Roland Riveron, who was drumming with us, and he would spend his time valeting the corner of his car so it was spotlessly clean. And it was he, in fact, who pointed out the livery of the lorries. We'd start off with this game where you would basically, the first person to spot an Eddie Stobart lorry would then get £1 from each of the other people in the car, you see. And on a long journey, especially up the A1 or something like that, well, you could make hundreds of pounds, frankly. And it would have to be a confirmed sighting. You know, it's no because somebody saying, I saw one, give me £1 and then nobody else can see it. It would have to be a confirmed Eddie Stobart sighting. And then, of course, there are, I believe, there's various sort of nests of the lorries as well that are on the side of, and that would be a bonanza payout for the first person to spot one of those.
We sell a whole range of items from button badges up to rally jackets, in between limited edition trucks and vehicles, calendars, diaries. All sorts of people want to buy our items, ranging from kiddies to pensioners.
It's a full spread of people who have caught something that we have. That if only we could bottle it and sell it, we'd make a fortune.
And the latest addition to the range of Stobart merchandise is this, the Carlisle United strip, available in all sizes. It's another way of the company showing its involvement in his hometown, as well as spreading the name a little further afield.
Well, obviously they're a very famous company which have their links locally, but also on an international basis, so we're very pleased and proud that we do work together.
The club here is known as the Blues because of the colour of the shirts, and yet they wear a different colour for other games.
Well, that's right. I mean, we just happen to wear the green, gold, red and white of the Stobart colours, and our nickname is the Deck Chair Army on away games. So the fans love referring to it as that, and the shirt is fantastically popular, of course. Tens of thousands have been sold over the last year and a half or so. Of course, Eddie Stobart does have rather more members of his fan club than Carlisle United at this moment.
We get a lot of requests for trucks to be at people's weddings, to either take them to the church or collect them from the church and take them to the hotel. Also for children's birthdays as a birthday surprise for them. Recently we've had a lot of telephone calls from film studios wanting us to put a truck on location.
Now, although the Stobart name has become recognised the length and breadth of the country, there is one place that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see it. Blackpool has been the home of all the top stars of show business over the world, and now, in the best showbiz traditions, Eddie Stobart has joined them and well and truly got his name up in lights.
We have 17 million visitors who come to Blackpool every year, and they spend an incredible £545 million. And I think the most important time, though, is the illuminations, and 8 million people will see those between the 30th of August and the 3rd of November.
How far afield do your visitors come from?
You'd be amazed at how far they will travel. I mean, we have visitors from Australia, from New Zealand, but the bulk of our visitors come from this country and actually come here because Blackpool Lights has been going now for something like the turn of the century.
I wonder what the people from New Zealand and Australia make of Eddie Stobart on the illuminations.
Well, we've answered quite a number of questions about, why are there trucks in lights? And I think people have been fascinated to know just why the trucks are up there, but they have been incredibly popular.
We came up with the ideas that, yes, he's doing a lot of merchandising in sort of dolly mixtures and teddies and rock and things like that. And so our designer went away and came up with a theme of motorway in the air. And these are about 9 foot high and about 6 foot wide, that sort of thing.
He's mixing with the best here, Coronation Street now.
Yes, this year we've got a sponsorship via Coronation Street, so not only will Eddie's trucks be there, but Coronation Street stars will be in the illuminations as well.
We've got Pepsi on the tower, which you can see behind me, and we've got McDonald's on board as well. I mean, it's nice to have companies that have a good reputation with the public actually putting money into Blackpool and being seen by so many people.
So Eddie Stobart's in good company then?
He certainly is.
As you'll have gathered, there are more than a few fascinating aspects to Eddie Stobart Limited. In fact, everywhere you turn, you discover some new amazing fact. But for millions of motorists, Eddie Stobart means just one thing: those marvellous trucks and the uniformed men who drive them. Hi Neville, how are you?
Fine, how's yourself, Tony?
Nice to see you again.
Yep.
How long have you been driving for Stobart?
Almost 20 years now.
I bet you've seen some changes over the years, haven't you?
Well, dramatic changes in road haulage in general, but especially Eddie Stobart Limited.
What's life like being a Stobart driver?
Well, it's nice, high-profile firm. We've got the best kit on the road, good conditions. Couldn't ask for any more, really, as a driver.
And what's it like, life out there on the road?
Well, it's hard to explain, really. It's a thing you'd like to try yourself, Would you care to come along?
I've often thought I would, actually, yeah.
Fine. Well, need to get out of this stuff and get into some nice green overalls or uniform.
Great! Right, now, how do I look?
Hey? You look terrific, Tony. Leather's button fastened
Oh dear,
up.
sorry, yes.
Right, we'll nip across and see what we're doing.
Righty-ho. And so it was off on a great expedition, a boyhood dream and the experience of a lifetime.
Oh,
hey.
How you doing? All right, Neville? Fine. Right, there's your trailer. Trailer 670, Neville. It's on the bays. Loaded for Coca-Cola Wakefield.
Right.
Oh, Wakefield.
Thank you very much.
Hey, great.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I know, that's at Yorkshire. Yeah, Yorkshire.
Yeah. We're up here at the moment, Tony. Carlisle, Penrith, Scotch Corner, on the A1 to Wakefield.
So, don't you come down the M62?
No, it's a longer distance to come and cut across the country.
Oh, fantastic. How long will that take?
2.5 hours driving time.
What, is it Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola, full load.
Should I take this?
Yes, you can take that, Tony. Okay.
How do you like driving on the ordinary roads compared to the motorway? But, wouldn't it be better just to go on all the way
Well,
through?
no, it's a lot less monotonous, and you've got things to do. If you work, you change gear, and sitting on a motorway for about 300 miles, it tends to get a bit tiring, really.
So we're now going down to Wakefield here, but we don't know what we're going to be doing after that particularly, do we? At this
Well, I
stage?
just ring in from there, and you get your follow-on load, so just find out after that.
So you just set off from home, you've no idea which
That's
way
right,
you're going to be. It's all sort of wallowing about and...
Yeah, most of it's on air suspension.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it can have a bit of a queasy effect when you're not used to it, But
yeah, it's fantastic. I noticed that we don't wear seatbelts on board the...
No, they're not compulsory at the moment, but I think the way the laws keep changing, I think they could be in a year or so.
Oh, it's marvellous, and you can see all the countryside around. It's fantastic up here, actually. Well, they're brilliant. Exactly 140 miles, and we've done it bang on schedule.
What do you think it's like being a trucker then, Tony?
Exhausting, absolutely exhausting.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks very much, then, George. Okay, bye.
See you, Neville.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Right, so you've spoken. What's happening now? Back home, is it?
No, we're off to Paris, okay?
Off to Paris?
Your trip to Paris, yeah.
You're joking? How long's that going to take?
Depending on loading, I would imagine about 12 hours. The load to pick up in Nottingham, and maybe get down to Stamford.
What, stay the night?
Yeah, Stamford Depot.
Oh, Joe, it's all go, isn't it? How many gallons does this hold then?
Well, different vehicles have different sizes. This one will hold approximately 100 gallons, you know.
Right, that's that. Look at that. I could do with a wash.
Well, we'll get the truck washed first, Tony, and then we can sort ourselves out.
Well, that was very interesting anyway. Good day's work. I'll be off to the hotel now and we'll start in the morning and take it from there.
Well, really, the idea of this trip was for you to see what life is really like on the road, Tony, so I know what you TV presenters are like. You can have my bed for the night and I'll take your hotel room.
You're joking?
No, I'm not. In you go.
I'll have a look at this then. Ah, very palatial. Hey, it's not as bad as I thought. Well, it's certainly got all mod cons, central heating, stereo, colour television, with a nice cup of tea. What more could you want for a good night's rest? Good night. Now, I suppose this is the only time that a Stobart driver is seen without his tie on, is it?
Well, usually first thing in the morning, last thing at night, Tony.
Actually, the facilities are quite nice here. I mean, you know, all the places are of a good standard.
Well, they've improved dramatically over the years. There are one or two places that still could do with a bit of improvement, but on the whole, they're pretty good.
And what are we in for when we go to France?
Generally pretty good in France, especially on the autoroute. The motorway service is clean, nice, tidy. Should be no problem.
Right, we're off then.
Fine.
Normally, Stobart drivers do anything to avoid traffic jams at all costs, but occasionally the inevitable happens. And it has today. Oh dear, this is going to affect our schedule.
Well, we might be able to catch you up later on as long as we don't get held around the M25 or somewhere further down.
Oh yes, we've got the dreaded M25 yet, haven't we?
Could be worse than this. Morning, how are you?
It's a very tiny little unimpressive ticket for a big trip under the channel, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It does the part anyway.
Yeah, you get better ones on the London Underground than this. Oh, look at that. Eddie Stobart's where we should be, at the head of the field.
At the front again.
At the front. Well, it's like half an hour since we got gone down to Folkestone and got on the train. We've been doing 90 miles an hour, 30 miles in length, and we're just about there. And we're ready for France.
Here we are in sunny France.
Sunny France, look at it. Raining. Dear me. Trying to find a way. I don't believe it. We're here 450 miles from Carlisle in a major truck stop in northern France. There are trucks of every nationality and every colour. Not one, not two, but 3 Eddie Stobarts. Nice little pavement bars. We might be in one of those later, you know.
I might have been one now, Tony, to be honest with you.
Well, here we are, the Champs-Élysées. Look at him, he cut straight across there in front of you, that little thing, then you tripped over it.
Typical French driver, I think.
At the small angles. It's great fun, this life on the road. We've done over 700 miles now since Carlisle, and we're going to drop our paint tin lids here in Paris.
Thanks very much, George. Right, Tony.
Now then.
What do you like a trip to the seaside?
They've told you where we're going next.
Yeah.
Where is it? Not the south of France, is it?
No. Next best thing, Ostend.
Oh, right. That's another country anyway, Belgium.
Okay.
It's a real mystery tour, is this? Fantastic. So that's it then, the final load for the UK. On here, 20 pallets of injection moulding granules for the plastic industry, the total weight the equivalent of 10 cars. And here, some very expensive paper that's going to be used to make lots of money, like this. So after 3 days and 3 countries, it was time to head for home. For me, it had been a unique opportunity to share the exciting and varied life of an Eddie Stobart driver. And I have to say, I'd enjoyed every single minute of it. Right, well that's it then. Just 23 miles to go. We're back home on home soil.
Yeah, won't be long now. It's been a long day, Tony. Go and get some food.
You couldn't get it any nearer the edge, could you?
Certainly, I can go and ask the captain if you like.
I hope you put the brakes on.
Rather different from an Arctic.
Have a go on the steering wheel, Neville. See how you can get on with the steering. John, let Neville have a sit there on the steering.
Thank you very much. Well insured. Bit different to the ball.
Now, as it goes to one side like that, then you have to bring the wheel to the opposite side.
Oh, of course.
That's good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Tell the captain, have you got an HGV licence by any chance?
No, I haven't, no.
you can come and
I have
have a go
trouble
at my
driving my car, so...
And so, back on home soil, the end of another successful trip for Eddie Stobart. Just one of a growing number of journeys in and out of mainland Europe. Journeys that may become ever more frequent with the purchase of the latest Eddie Stobart site.
It's from here in this former dusty old truck stop on the A5 that Stobart's plan their assault on Europe. It's 2 miles from Rugby, 6 miles from Daventry. It's the crossroads of Britain where the M1 meets the M6. It's at Crick and there's parking for 300 trucks. But it's no coincidence that Stobart's are situated just across the road from the proposed Daventry International Freight Terminal, where eventually 10 trains a day, each carrying 40 trailers, will head for the Channel Tunnel and out into Europe. There are 50 earth-moving machines here, shifting 3.5 million tonnes of soil, and the whole project will be completed within a year.
Crick is very important to Eddie Stobart Limited, where we're building 500,000 square foot of warehousing, which is due to be completed by the end of this year. Not only is it in the heart of England, it's actually right next door to the International Rail Freight Terminal, which is obviously very important to Eddie Stobart Limited's future.
I think we can make a strong play in Europe, and it's something that we are very much looking at the moment. It's a different market. I think we have to understand that. Many people have gone across and they've had their fingers burnt, dealing in a different language, a different culture. We've held back and we've looked at the United Kingdom, and all our growth to date has been within the United Kingdom. But we've got a good platform now that we can build on to go across the water to develop business across there.
Well, in true Stobart style, things are happening and happening quickly. The latest star of the fleet is Heidi, and it's a little different to any other truck. For a start, it's got a funny number plate, and the steering wheel and the driver are on the wrong side. Now, what's happening here?
Dit is de eerste vrachtwagen van Eddie Stobart, gevestigd in Nederland en Europa.
Now, I don't suppose you could tell me that in English, could you?
Yeah, well, this is the first truck from Eddie Stobart based in Holland and Europe.
Right. Just another step in Eddie Stobart Limited's expansion.
It's very difficult to define the ultimate potential of this company. What it will do, in the minimum, is to grow, in my view, at least at the rate it has done over recent years. But beyond that, the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned.
We could take this company a great deal further, and I wouldn't like to put a cap on the growth of this company.
And the growth of the company is now being controlled from the group headquarters here at Newby Grange, just outside Carlisle, by the two brothers.
Our business is to provide a service to move things from production line to the end user. And like any other company, you've got to measure yourself. And Eddie Stobart Limited, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, measured its own performance. You have to measure vehicle usage, warehouse usage, driver usage, use of diesel. We measure everything.
The whole company has grown through service to the customer. If you give a service to the customer and you give him the right service at the right cost, if you get that bit right, everything else will fall into place.
The strength of Eddie Stobart Limited is the people. It's the people what operate Eddie Stobart Limited, and they've got to be the right people, whether they're washing trucks or accountants or they're operating or they're driving trucks. It doesn't really matter. They've got to be the right people, and that's a very key strength.
Where this company can grow to is unbelievable, really.
If you're at a party and somebody says, who do you work for? Eddie Stobart Limited. You're very often the centre of attraction. I mean, it's crazy when we're a transport company. But it's great, and I think that gives every employee a tremendous buzz in working for the company. That puts a value on the bottom line that most accountants wouldn't even recognise. But I know that in terms of employee motivation, their sense of involvement, and that sheer pride in the corps d'esprit, their motivation is somewhere working through into our bottom line.
It's a tremendous product there, great brand name now, a brand name that expresses quality, and it's in an industry where traditionally there has not been quality of service. And we've provided that.
They've transformed the image of the road haulage industry with the appearance of the vehicles, with the behaviour and the appearance of the drivers. The vehicles are spotlessly clean, superbly equipped, and they've pioneered things like the side skirts with the coach lines and the attention to livery. And that's what Stobart represents to the motoring public.
If you're driving around a lot, it's just a reassuring thing to see. The things are all going to be right if there's a Stobart lorry going up the road. That's the way to put it. They are the knights of the road.
The star of the show is Eddie Stobart Limited, which is a company which is about 1,800 people. It's not one person. It's not Edward Stobart. The star of the show is the Eddie Stobart truck on the motorway and that driver.
So whether you're beside the seaside and Blackpool Tower, or by the River Seine and the Eiffel Tower, the chances are you're never far from an Eddie Stobart truck. Cheers.